Iron and Infrastructure Podcast Introduction. The podcast that ties together fitness and construction, shifting the industry narrative and giving insight on how to become a business owner while living life under the bar, weightlifting, personal development, the infrastructure industry, and how to merge the two worlds to achieve prosperity. I'd rather be sidelined trying to achieve greatness than watch greatness achieved and it only set on the sideline. Now introducing your host, Jacob Emery. All stand and applaud, please.
This episode is brought to you by R&R Pipeline, an infrastructure company. Our purpose? Enhancing America's infrastructure with a safety-driven, integrity-led culture that provides an environment for team members to grow and thrive. Welcome to the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. On today's show, I have a guest that is someone I met because of somewhat an unfortunate circumstance. But because of the unfortunate circumstance, we have created a friendship and kind of a brotherhood. This man sitting next to me has a very, very well-accomplished resume at such a young age of 35 years old. He serves our country as a reserve in the Army. He is a doctor and a father. Dr. Dan Fosselman, appreciate you coming on the show today.
Love sitting down with you.
So I did not realize how well accomplished he is in a physical realm, from a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, powerlifter. The background is pretty admirable. And I want to get right into what the show's all about. So the Iron Infrastructure Show podcast is all about wellness, fitness, personal development, and how to build your personal infrastructure. And you've obviously showcased that very well yourself in your endeavors. How does physical preparation prepare you for your mental production and how you operate as a doctor at a high level?
Yep. So George Liner wrote a book called Mastery, and strength training gave me the keys for pretty much everything in my life. So what you're going to notice is consistency over time is what's going to give you outcomes. The weight room, the way I got started in that is I watched a 50 Cent video in the club. I saw 50 Cent on the treadmill, his pecs are bouncing, and so I'm like, I'm going to do pec deck all day. You build this confidence, and when you start training, maybe I did it for vanity or because you want to pick up girls at the time. But what you see is that you're going to gain confidence just by building muscle, putting more weight on the bar, and you just feel better and better. The other thing that you notice about training is if you've ever taken it seriously, it can get impacted significantly by other aspects of your life. So if you're not sleeping, you're going to have bad sessions. If you're stressed out because of school or not sleeping, you're going to have bad sessions. If you're going out and you're partying and you're hungover all the time, you're going to have bad sessions. So what I took away from that is just like work now, if you put in a little bit of work often over a long period of time, you're going to get good results. And there's so many parallels that I took away from training that impacted every single aspect of my life.
So there's no quick fix, no pill that you can take and be ripped in a week?
In a week? No.
There's no longevity, or there's nothing that can shortcut the longevity part of it. The consistency over time, like you said, is everything. I don't know how long you've been lifting. I started about 20 years ago, and I haven't been everyday consistent, but in 20 years I've been fairly consistent, 75 to 95% of the time. Now I'm in the best shape of my life. I would assume that you're fairly close because of experience and because of understanding now that you're probably in the best shape of your life also, correct?
Well, I had a newborn a month ago, so I would say I've taken a little bit slide back over the past month, but 100%.
In general, though,
right. Absolutely. In general, I am more the person I want to be now, but probably just like you, there's some wear on the tires from training for 20 years.
So we gain insight and experience over that time, and then we also understand that we can only hit the gas pedal for so long, and then I'm not a brake pedal guy at all, but maybe just let off the gas and kind of cruise a little bit. And I think it's understanding the complexity of imbalances, longevity of, like in my situation with the knee, the injury history that I have is all coming back to me full circle now. It's all kind of collided, but now I understand my body better than I've ever understood it, where I had an issue for 15 years and I just made it worse by, it's not that bad. I can get through it. And I ended up making it 10 times worse than what it should have been. So let's talk about your productivity on a day to day, because you mentioned you have a newborn. And for me, wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 days a week. I know you wake up very early as well, but we're able to have the energy and the stamina because of that foundation built over time. Where for me, if I didn't have a solid foundation of training, I don't think I would be able to do near as much as I am now. Now it's not even an emotional reaction. I get out of bed when my first alarm goes off. I'm here when I'm supposed to be here. It's not a thought. There's no thinking about it. I just do this. This is part of who I am.
Yeah, spot on. So for me, it's, when I became a father, you realize the only real free time you have is either in the morning before they're up and right after they go to bed at night. And my time after we put the kid to bed at night is time with my wife. The time in the morning, I'm up for my wife and the kid. And that's kind of my time, and I need that. And when you talk about training, for me, that's always been my medicine. So
100%.
Right now, the way I view exercise is two things. So when I go in to lift, that's my meditation. That's my time to myself. I don't like really having training partners. I just go in there to clear my head and lift. When I go to jiu-jitsu, that's my social component at this phase of life. So
that's your team.
That's
right?
my team. And, there's guys, I've heard this best is like, you can have a choice. I can go to the bar at night with some guys and get a divorce, or I can go in at 5 a.m. and train jiu-jitsu with my buddies, develop friendships, and we all make each other better. And it's like, I would much rather have that life than being an alcoholic and divorced.
100%. So my life could have went one of either way. I am a impulsive, obsessed individual, and I have been fortunate to figure out that it all needs to go toward productivity in a positive manner. And now I'm obsessed with being the best version of myself that I can and helping other people. But I could easily be that person in the bar had it not been focused on that and been, the divorced drunk that you see more often than not. One component, so many people don't figure out that, is it easy? No. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But being a drunk isn't easy either. There's no fun in that. There's no glamour in that. And it's wellness or illness. There is no other focus. You are not going to have another option. If you're not cognitive of your wellness, you're going to be forced to focus on your illness at some point, because everyone's going to break down with all the habits being bad.
Yep. And one of the parallels that I see from training too is personal finance. So it's if you set aside a little bit every single paycheck, and
compound effect,
and you get the compound effect. Exactly. So you get that from, the amount of doors and relationships I've developed from strength and conditioning, it's been it's the biggest blessing that I have in my life.
Yeah.
And, to your point, it's not to say if you're 50 years old, you can't start an exercise routine and improve your health. It's just like, if you don't start saving for retirement until age 50, you can do it, but it's going to be much, much harder. And I think the blessing that you and I had is an early introduction to strength training. It radically transforms your life. And the earlier you can do that, the better. But it's kind of like that tree statement. It's like the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The second best time is
right
now.
Yeah.
And you just have to do it. And it's like, when your health is squared away and your finances are squared away, your capacity to give, continue learning, engage in other endeavors is far bigger than it would be had you not done
100%.
those things earlier on.
I often reference being selfish. I have to put myself first and take care of myself first with my training, my personal development. Everything that I do on an individual basis is selfish. What I do is for me, but why I do it's for everybody else, because what I do on a daily basis is a lot, but I'm a much better productive person as a father, as a husband, as an owner of a company. Everyone gets the best version of me on a daily basis because I put myself first. And so many people, look at that, oh, he's just a selfish ass or whatever, but I'm actually being selfless because I am giving my best version to everyone else because of what I do that's selfish.
Yeah, I think you need to work on rewording that statement, because I'm completely in agreement with you. But I think at your heart, you care so much about your family and these other people, and in order to give them the best version of myself, I have to do this on a daily basis. And that's why I say me exercising is taking my medication. If I don't
100%.
do that, I'm grouchy, irritable.
This dose is a lot better than the other one, right?
Correct, 100%. And it's like, and there have been phases of life in my relationship where I haven't had these things. I feel like I didn't have money or time to train jiu-jitsu, and it's like when that doesn't happen, my wife sees I'm miserable and irritable, and she's like, I'm blessed that I'm in a relationship where she has that insight to say, you need this, go do it.
Right.
Because
it's therapy.
It's
therapeutic,
therapy, and I don't want to be around you when you're a grouch.
Right. And a lot of people, they associate cost to training, and, I can't afford to do that. In my opinion, you can't afford not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a way to cut costs and maneuver what they spend on the priority. Wellness should always be the top priority for an individual as far as a hobby. I know the impact it's had on my life, and it's continued to have, and the amount of confidence I have now and the amount of ability I have now, and my presence when I walk in a room in a business setting now because of it. Everything's different. Everything's magnified at a high level. The way that I view the world, the confidence level, I don't think anything's impossible. Anything that I want to do, I'm going to do in my life because of the confidence that I've established from a foundational level. There's a lot of power in that carryover to a day-to-day. And for us at Old School Gym, the 4 a.m. crew, it's a brotherhood. Everyone comes in, probably like the jiu-jitsu for you. Everybody comes in that door from a different walk of life, a different diverse background, different financial, situation, but no one gives a shit about any of that.
Nope.
You're there to get better. And that's what it's all about, is showing up with that team. It's a team culture, and it's all about building your infrastructure, getting better on a daily basis, and having that group of guys is special. And I don't know if you've had this happen or not, any, but last year and a half, when I show up at the gym, I'm normally here from 3:30 to 3:45, one of the first few people here, and I have about 10 minutes on a bike of warming up. Complete gratitude. I'm thankful. I'm looking at the building. I'm present because I know one day it's not going to be there. So in the past, that year and a half, I've really been able to have like a therapeutic response to training with gratitude that I would have never anticipated that 5 years ago. And everything has a shelf life, right? One day you're not going to be doing jiu-jitsu, no matter how invincible you think you are. And I know that I won't be getting under the bar every day.
I think you're wiser than I am. When I can stop and reflect on that, I'm in complete agreement. That's the thing you notice. Jiu-jitsu, it beats you up. And I just had this conversation with the guy who owns our school, and he's like, when you get to that black belt level, you're gonna pay a significant price on your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing for most people. If they're pursuing an elite total, they're performing elite performance in any athletic endeavor, like, you're gonna have injuries, you're
right.
gonna have scars, and these injuries you have as you age, guess what? You're gonna hurt. And you're accumulating into debt on your body too. And I think right now you're trying to kind of correct some of those debts that you had in the past, but it takes a lot. And then, one day, you might hurt your back, and there's permanent nerve damage, and you see that more often than or your neck, and you can't train anymore. So I agree with you. It's a blessing that we get to do that.
And for me, I know you can probably elaborate on this in a much more intelligent way than I can, but having the muscle foundation and that strength foundation, the amount of opportunity and longevity that we're going to create for ourselves because of that strength base is so massive. And so many people talk about obesity being this crisis and all that. And I've read some studies myself, and this might actually surprise you that some redneck like me has actually read data. I have, believe it or not. But there's science that shows that, yes, obesity is a massive problem, but it's also the lack of muscle mass to have the strength to carry the weight when people are overweight. Yeah,
so, lean body mass, massive importance for a million different reasons. And it's, what I always say is quality of life comes down to pain and function. So if you have underlying muscle mass, typically you're going to have less pain. Muscle, I always, say it's essentially a tightening ligament that's going to provide you more stability. So you're going to get a pain reduction from that. You're going to be able to do what you want. You can participate in whatever activities with your kids that brings you joy, or play sports. the average American now, they're overweight and under muscled. Muscle helps with insulin sensitivity, so you're not gonna, you're less likely to have diabetes,
Right.
cardiovascular disease as a result of all of that. And to your point, there are a lot of people who are skinny fat and they're just under muscled. So obesity, massive problem. A relative strength deficit, massive problem. And Peter Attia talks a lot. Grip strength is actually one of the best indicators for longevity overall. And there are some studies on that, and I'm in agreement. And I think people are just becoming weaker spiritually, physically, and kind of all aspects. Right
More
now.
accepting of it, more accepting of being weak,
Yep.
mentally and physically.
Yep.
And I refuse. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. For me, it's just the non-negotiable. Something about the grip strength that you just mentioned, it's interesting because is there a correlation to that physical ability to have a strong grip to your CNS?
Absolutely. And, I think the bigger question you're trying to ask is whether it's CNS or just ability to withstand pain or function. So if you've ever done like a max effort hang from a pull-up bar, it's just like doing a wall sit. It's like, do I think that if I can do a 10-minute wall squat, I'm going to squat 600 pounds? No.
Right.
But, I do think there's that, how much pain can you withstand in that short period of time? And I think people
Mental strength.
Exactly.
Right.
It's mental strength and physical strength that
Right.
are tied into
And I just kind of thought of that as you were talking. I was just thinking about myself, squeezing the bar or something that's often yelled in the crew before a big lift. And, especially on a bench press for me, Tony Ramos from Westside always taught me to take the bar and then act like you're actually trying to squeeze it in half, like you're trying to bend that bar in half, and it sets you right in a natural benching position. And so as soon as you said that, that's exactly where my mind went, was that because it engages your CNS because you're really grounded to that piece of iron.
Yep.
It's grounding in your hands and your whole entire body's grounded to it.
Yep. And so it's proprioception too. So to that point, when you can come up with these little triggers, strength is important, but when you talk about stability, like as you age, an important thing is, body awareness, and how am I moving in space? And as you're training that skill set with barbell movements as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just I'm putting on muscle mass and getting stronger and developing my CNS. It is also that body awareness that becomes even more paramount as you age. And if you have that developed, less likely to fall, your gait's going to be better. All of those things are there. So I don't, if we're just talking now and this is a hypothesis, I don't think it's just I'm putting on lean body mass and maybe my nerve firing pattern is better. There is essentially, a central process there that is contributing to why these people do well long term as well.
Yeah, that's very, very intriguing. So we touched base on the physical side of it. You were 2-sport athlete in high school, 3. Okay, my bad. Make sure correct me on that.
Yep.
You played lacrosse in college. You're a doctor. You're a reserve in the Army. You're a father of 2 kids. You're a very, very accomplished person. The physical foundation for you has had to have such a strong carryover, but you're a damn doctor also. So let's talk about personal development, mental capacity, and more on the mental side, the development side of you as a person. What are some of the best personal development things that you've learned, and then how do you do your personal development? What's your method?
Yeah, so we'll talk about being an adult learner. So this is something that I struggled with. So I always say I'm an overeducated idiot. So why I say that as an adult learner is I have one buddy, he's very good at what I'll call researching information. So he reads an article, from that he's going to the next thing, and so he develops his own curriculums. I have not developed that skill set well, meaning that I'll try to bridge the gap so I'll learn about something, but I oftentimes seek out a set curriculum in that matter. So for me, it was, medical school, you get a curriculum, fellowship had a curriculum, and that's why I continue to do fellowships even after I finished my formal education training, is just because it's a set curriculum. It gives me a lot of structure in pursuing like these additional education environments. There's a significant financial cost to that, but the benefit to me is it's time dependent. So I'm only going to have a limited amount of time to get it done. And it kind of forces me.
Sense of urgency.
Exactly. Yeah. So it creates these they're not even artificial barriers. It's like real barriers to get the additional education done. And I've always found value from that. I think there's a huge benefit into having a broad knowledge base. So again, being dumb, I pursued a MBA when I was in residency, and I went into it trying to learn basic personal finance and not understanding that it's more directed to business administration and management. Right. But when you get into that realm, and I was actually paying my own money for this education, and it wasn't just taking out loans, I took more ownership over the education process. It introduced me to people in very different sectors from healthcare, and you can learn a lot from all of these people. So right now, the biggest struggle I have is when it comes to patient care, I think a lot of our systems are not good. We don't have effective communications. There's system breakdowns. People don't get their results in a timely fashion. There's poor communication, and there needs to be a solution to those things in order to deliver the best healthcare possible. And so it completely shifted my perspective. If I want to be the best doctor possible, it doesn't mean, do I read this book on healthcare and know that in that time, if I can't effectively communicate it or have the systems processed where this patient has, the information and resources they need to execute that plan I give them, I'm not delivering good care. And I don't think a lot of providers have that same perception. I think they think, if I give you this information at one time, my job is done. And where I even saw this, more acutely is I bought my house, and my realtor, he sends me a card every single Christmas. He follows up. He continued to ask our needs. There's constant conversation. And I was like, this is the best customer service I've ever gotten in any organization. Yeah. And I'm like, how is this realtor doing it, but we're not doing it from a healthcare setting? Yeah. And that just impacted me so vividly. And it's like a frustrating thing for me is getting a haircut, and I'm like, I can schedule that online. I show up, I get my appointment, and I get better customer service getting a frickin' haircut than I do spending a ton of money getting healthcare.
Yeah, that's amazing that you said it, because healthcare is such a massive industry in the United States and in the world. And because of the amount of academia background you have to be in that sector at all, the personal finances are overlooked. I know my attorney has referenced multiple times that every doctor he's worked with, or majority of doctors that he works with, has no understanding of finance and how to lower tax liability, how to invest money, make a ton of money. They spend a ton of money. Yep. And normally spend more than they make, or as much as they make. And they have a lot of nice stuff, but they have a lot of debt, a lot of bad debt, consumer debt that's not, any type of asset. Everything's a liability. And that's not something that's taught in school. I didn't know about personal finances until I realized that I'm completely broken. I'm trying to buy a multi-million-dollar company. I got to figure this shit out really quick. Yep. And the other part of it, healthcare is a business. You have to have specialty personnel in that business, but it's still a business. It still has to be operated like a business. And you see a lot of time, I'm assuming you can elaborate on this if it's true or not, but is it really a business the way that the field is run, the industry goes, or is it a practice of, students of medical industry that don't have business background? You've seen some pretty successful doctors' businesses, operations. What separates the really good from the really bad? Is it that customer service? I always talk about documentation and communication. Them two things are taken care of. Your organization's going to be running really, really good. Them are the two hardest things, and the most two obvious things, though, and probably 99% of companies I've ever been involved in as far as being efficient and timely.
Yep. So the reason people say healthcare is a complex industry is because there's not often a direct customer-provider transaction. So you have a third-party payer that is going to complicate everything. So from an operations standpoint, in order to deal with them, we have this billing and coding system. There's not price transparency.
And you're probably limited on the action you can take because of that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And people don't have the initiative to oftentimes to learn that system. So what was nice for me when I started practice, I went into private practice. I got my balance sheets, and I was able to look at that, and my essentially worth of the organization was very black and white. Are you profitable or are you not? And most people in an employed setting, they operate on something called an RVU, which is a productivity thing, but there's no dollar sign that the doctor sees that's attributed to that. So their worth to the organization is really a big time mystery. And I think it's right, the current system, it's not a great value proposition for a patient or a customer because there's not the price transparency. You don't know how much you're paying. You're going to be paying this insurance company massive amounts of dollars when you don't need it.
Heavily regulated.
It's heavily regulated. Yeah. And there's reasons for a lot of these things, but I think we've, as an industry, gotten away from, how do we get people healthier over time? And this has created a lot of downstream effects that have led to the current system that we have today. And unfortunately, I think people have negative attitudes towards insurance, the pharmaceutical industry, the healthcare industrial complex because of the complexity. But at the root cause, I don't think insurance is a bad thing. If you don't have $250,000 and you get in a massive accident and have to be in the ICU, it's a good thing to have. But do you need insurance for general routine care? Probably not, and we all lump that together. Pharmaceutical industry, I think, there are people who have rare diseases now that maybe would have died in infancy, and now they have a lot longer life expectancy, or they can live a relatively normal life. That's a massive blessing. But people get down on, yes, they're definitely pushing a product, and they want a market to be everyone, and does everyone really need that? The answer is no. So I don't think it's as black as white as, pharmaceuticals evil, insurance is evil, the hospitals are evil, but they definitely have some things that are not always in everyone's best interest.
Right. This is something that is, I wonder what your opinion is on it. I'm fairly confident I know the answer, but obesity is at all-time high. We have a abundance of resources today as far as food. There's no scarcity of food like there was 90 years ago, and everyone could go to the street corner and get food and at a cheap rate. When you go to the doctor, everyone bashes on pharmaceutical companies, but when a patient comes in that's heavily overweight and they have high blood pressure, diabetes, or on track to have diabetes, and you prescribe them something to lower their blood pressure for an immediate crutch with the incentive of going to lose weight, and then they don't actually take the steps to lose the weight. How much of the pharmaceutical push is because of a lack of accountability for the consumer, the individual, not taking the steps to lower that liability and mitigate the risk by taking the steps that were shown to them? Yep.
So I'm going to speak in a lot of generalizations, so I'll just put that caveat out there. This comes to a victim mindset versus can you take autonomy and ownership of your life?
Yep.
So there's different types of doctors. So there's MDs, DOs, chiropractors, and naturopathic doctors. And they all have individual tenets. And what I like about naturopathic doctors is they make the statement very clear that the individual is responsible for their own health.
What is best for the individual, right? But individualized.
Not necessarily providing individualized care, but that the patient needs to take ownership of their health in order for that outcome to happen. What I think has happened is when you talk to a lot of patients, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, they have this assumption that it's always 100% genetics. My parents had this, so I am doomed to have this same condition. No matter what I do, I can't change the outcome of this. Do I believe that? Absolutely not. So it's how do you walk with this person to start believing that they have the ability to stimulate change in their life. So that's what I said. We are blessed that we, probably a lot from our parents or training, learned that if you want to be happy in this life, you have to take ownership of that. There's what I call 50 or 60-year-old children. And what I mean by that is they don't believe they have the ability to change the trajectory of their life. So how do you do that? I think you need to take an individual approach. So again, this is my belief is how do you teach someone that they have the intrinsic value to even put forth any effort to change? So for me, that's kind of a faith thing is, Jesus Christ teaches unconditional love, or he's a perfect example of that. In order to believe that you can change your life. You have to love yourself enough to make that
Yes.
change. And most of the time, I believe that has to come from some kind of faith or spiritual background where it's, I have enough self-worth that I'm worth changing to better my life.
Wow. I love it. That message is absolutely amazing, and it fits perfectly with the narrative of the show. I started working out at 13 because I was a fat kid and I got made fun of. I got my ass kicked on the school bus, whatever. That was my adversity at a young age. So I worked out, A, to lose weight, B, to get stronger. It stuck with me to this day. I worked out because I hated myself then, but now I do it because I love myself. I have enough self-respect and self-worth that I know that I am my best self when I do these things. And now I do it as a sense of gratitude and appreciation for me, not because of the fat kid that hates himself. And understanding that self-love is very, very impactful. Success is something that's also individual. So kind of like what you're talking about with the individual person, it's on us no matter what. We essentially live two lives, and the second one starts when we realize that no one's coming to save our ass. Everything that we experience in life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And adversity is only the reaction to it. So the adversity is only so bad as a reaction. What you end up becoming in life is a lot of your reaction to your adversity. For me, I've been fortunate enough to figure out and navigate my adversity in a positive light and become someone that can help other people and not someone that is a degenerate that doesn't have the ability to help other people. Why do you think so many people are disconnected with their internal self? Is it like self-love, whatever you would want to call it, but is it opinions of others that matter so much to others? Because I don't give a shit what people think about me. But do you think people are so stuck on others' opinions? Or why do you think that there's such a neglect for individual body and well-being?
It hurts. So at some point you have to look in the mirror and you might not like what you see.
Yeah.
So, if you have $20,000 in credit card debt, it's very easy to not look at your net worth on Mint before it went away, or to actually collect the data and see where you're at. When you're 400 pounds, it really hurts when you step on the scale and it says 400. And I think for most people, it's easier to not look at where they are at a set point in time. And so as a result, they make no changes. And, do I think people tend to drift towards chaos if they do nothing and take no ownership? I do. So it's like if you take your hands off the wheel of a car, you're going to veer off into a ditch. And I think that's the natural course of people's lives. So it's like you have to grab the wheel, you have to take ownership, and you have to make that change. But, using the car analogy, some people don't grab the wheel until they hit the tree. And so maybe rock bottom for you was you got made fun of one time and it was the last time, and you're like, I do not want to be a fat kid anymore, and I got to change my life. For me, I remember the reason I lifted weights the first time was I was playing basketball and I got pushed around by a kid who was bigger than me. So I'm like, well, how do I correct this situation? So I did frickin' bicep curls because that was the only lift that I knew. Because I was like, if I do this, it's going to change my life. So, for a lot of people, they have to have that rock bottom moment, or a moment where they look in the mirror. And, before we started recording, we were talking about, for me, I gained a lot of weight after I stopped playing lacrosse. And it wasn't until I looked at a photo of myself next to a guy who was overweight, and I was like, man, I look like that guy, that I realized I had to start changing something. Otherwise, this is going to get out of control.
Yeah. It's that's really, really interesting. We had the guy Josh Akers on the show a couple episodes ago, and that's the person I thought of whenever we started talking about this, because he was about 380 pounds. He's 6'4", 380 a few years ago. Overweight, goes to the doctor. He wasn't feeling good, and they told him high blood pressure and diabetic, like pre-diabetic, and gave him pills to take, and were very, very pushy on taking these pills to lower it. And he said, if I lose X amount of weight when I come back, will I not have to take these? So he went on a weight loss journey, and he's down almost 100 pounds now. And he actually worked in the same industry that we do, but he just came to work for us in September of last year. So he's at R&R Pipeline now. And, you know, when he first came in, he had lost probably 60 or 70 pounds, but he hit this plateau and he was stuck. And he was talking to me about it one day, and I referenced a couple things on food, you know, pushing carbohydrates back into later in the afternoon because he was getting real sluggish, tired in the morning, and it was eating fruit for breakfast. So I was like, you know, push that back, basic stuff. But then he wasn't strength training. And I just said, Josh, you've lost almost 100 pounds. You're almost to that target weight. You've lost a lot of weight. What happens when you lose another 100? I was like, you have no foundation. And the most disappointing thing that could happen is you go on this 150-pound weight loss journey and you're still miserable because you don't have anything underneath. You can only strip down fat so far, and then it's just skinny. Mm-hmm. And I was like, build your foundation, start focusing on strength, quit looking at the scale, because the scale's not going to go down because you're going to eat enough to fuel your body to build strength. But you will transform your life in every facet because you're getting stronger mentally and physically. It's like a piñata. You can have 20 kids go up and hit that thing, and nothing happens. But then the 21st kid hits it, and it all, you know, comes apart. That's kind of like what we do with wellness. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But building that foundation of strength for him has changed his life once again. So he lost all this weight. He was feeling great, but then he started not feeling good.
Yep.
And then because he lost a lot of weight, but he was just getting skinnier and still had fat. But then he started building that strength from, you know, really from the inside out instead of the outside in. And now he sees it. Now he understands. And what was stressing him out was that weight dropping. And it doesn't stress him out that much anymore because he feels better. He looks better. He's more confident because of the weight. It's amazing the transformation that he's had. But he's so rare because so many people would rather just take a pill and avoid it. And for me, failure to me is quitting. But even worse than that, you know, quitting on an endeavor is a failure to me. But even worse is not trying. How someone can be, you know, look in the mirror and be disgusted with himself and not try to change it is absolutely mind-boggling to me.
In kind of evaluating the story you just told, I think my main takeaway is he put in all of this effort, and he got to a point and he's like, why isn't life easier? And I think that can be discouraging for a lot of people.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, for my example is you know, we were talking about education. So I did 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, did 3 years of residency, additional year of fellowship. My first year in practice was 2020. And I finally built up my patient panel, and then the pandemic happens. And it was like, I remember walking with my wife, and I was so angry because I was like, I've put in all of this work, and the government just shut down my business, and I have no income. And I was just like, when is it going to click that everything is just smooth and it's all gravy? And I think this is maybe the dark side of personal development is like, it never stops.
No, never.
And so whether you're in business, you know, you think maybe, oh, once my company's worth $100 million, my life is going to be perfect. And that's not the case. And so then it's this evolution of, are you willing to accept the process and put in the minimum things every day, and then figure out what is enough for you and what kind of life do you want and what is that ideal life? And that's another massive transition or stage of personal development that people have to go through is, what is a good life to me? And trust me, a lot of people who are quote unquote successful are completely miserable because they have not been able to pivot and accept that reality that it's never going to end. Stress is always going to come. And then no matter what, you got to keep grinding for all of your days of existence on earth.
Let's take a quick commercial break, and I want to touch on that again because you're teeing it up unintentionally, but you're teeing it up perfectly for something I want to talk about. This commercial break is brought to you by the Pipeline to Prosperity newsletter. What are you putting in your pipeline to be successful? In Iron and Infrastructure LLC production. All right, we're back from commercial break, and you just alluded to a lot of what I like to try to discuss on the show is something that I've recognized more recently. 4 years of college, and then 4 years of undergrad, and then whatever education. 12 years of education, right? and then something happens and you just don't feel anything. And I went through 12 years of working in a business, on a business, buying a business, and it was sacrifice. It was everything I had to do this one thing in 12 years. And I thought after 12 years, this accomplishment is going to be the most fulfilling thing that ever happened to me. And 2 days after we closed on the purchase of the business, I felt gutted. I felt empty. I felt lost. I had no idea why, because I thought this is the thing that I've wanted for so long, and it's here. And now I feel no accomplishment whatsoever. And since that, I've realized that there's always a next destination in our journey, right? I will have a next destination in mind till the day I die. And even when I'm dead, I won't know any different because I'll still be desiring this next thing. Whenever we think about success, success is individual. But what we accomplish in life isn't the real achievement. It's who we become to achieve these things. So buying on our pipeline wasn't the accomplishment as much as the person that I became internally to be able to buy that company. The amount of development that went into me as a person and everyone around me, the team of people that contributed to that purchase. That was the accomplishment. It wasn't the tangible thing. Sometimes it's the internal thing. It's who we become to be able to do these things. And I'm wondering if you had a similar experience with all the hardship that you went through. Is it the accomplishment of becoming a doctor, fulfilling some of your life's dreams, or is it the person that, is it that tangible doctor in front of your name, or is it the fact that you have developed yourself from such a far level after so much time that the person that you are today is the actual accomplishment?
So you asked about what do I view, so you brought up success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do I view as success is how well do I prepare the people that are going to come after me to be awesome, right? So where I always feel indebted is I've had these awesome people in my life,
Mm-hmm.
LJ Hackett, Mark Watts, Eric Serrano, and they've invested all of this into me, and I people feel like I have done the same for the next group of people. Mm-hmm. And what do I think I'm going to define my life as success is if when I'm dead at my funeral, there's a group of people that said, Dan Fosselman radically transformed my life and made me the person I am today, or provided this example.
Yep.
And so to me, that's the ultimate goal is you build yourself up, but if you're not passing on that information or developing other people, was it really a success? And, this is a big issue for people with financial success is, maybe you have a net worth of $100 million and then you completely spoil your kids and destroy their lives. Were they really successful? And they may say no. I think they would much rather have well-adjusted children that live the lives that they want, without the money than just, a big net worth that they go out and spend it and destroy themselves.
Right.
So to me, that I think is probably what I'm going to start, I've hopefully started to strive for that by, having students and trying to educate other people. But I think that's the natural progression is this becoming a teacher, an educator, and someone that just gives back.
Mm-hmm. It provide value with no expectation of return. That's how I kind of phrase it. But I never thought that me buying this company and doing that would lead to what it has now. The purchase of our pipeline was the ability to showcase my hard work and effort toward this one thing. But the power that it really instilled in me was the power to help other people. And now success is individual. Everyone has their own individual success, but a true showcase of success to me is not my success. It's who's successful around me.
Yep.
If I'm only being successful by myself, it's not serving anyone else. It's not a measurable of success to me. Success is an individual desire, meaning that it could be a school teacher or a school bus driver, part of your community, an entrepreneur, whatever it is. The desire for what you do in life is individual, but the ability to help other people is where the success really comes from for me.
Absolutely.
And now that's why this show started, because I want to help provide awareness for other people that went through or are facing challenges that I have in my life. And in the blue collar workforce, there's a lot of challenges out there, and just general awareness about health, mobility, for longevity. is what I've really started all this because of, because everyone works their ass off to provide for their family, but don't realize that what they do throughout the day is going to hinder them to provide for their family later on down the road. And the true measure of success to me is an individual, though. And that's the major thing. I want to help as many people as I can. The side effect of helping other people is financial return, more than likely, because you have value that you can showcase, provide value to other people, and then the return ends up being some sort of financial return. So buying on our pipeline isn't going to be the reason that I'm going to have the financial return as much as that platform and what I became now merging together, and the outreach that I'll be able to have now is going to be the return for me.
Yep.
And, you know, freedom is my ultimate goal, financial freedom. I don't have a measurable on it, but financial freedom, but also the freedom of time, purpose, and relationships. So the ability to do what I want, when I want, and how I want to do it, that's the ultimate goal for me. But success is such a misguided word sometimes. And entrepreneurship and being a business owner, so many people misunderstand the bigger picture of it, myself included, until you realize it. It's empty when the accomplishment happens and there's nothing there. Like internally, there was nothing there. Nothing felt different, except for my sense of urgency that now I'm responsible for not one family of mine, but 70 families.
Yep.
And that was the turning point for me. Now I have to not only provide for myself, but all these other families too. And one mistake that I make could sacrifice putting food on the table for everybody.
Yep.
It's a huge responsibility to bear. But the internal gratification that I have now and the viewpoint of the world now has completely evolved over the last couple of years. And now I am just so grateful that A, I understand it, but B, now I have an opportunity to help others and expedite their journey. And one thing that I really have a passion for doing is being able to visualize or see opportunity in other people that they can't see yet, because I had people do that for me.
Yep.
And kind of like what you were saying about legacy and whatnot, at the end of the day, financial gain's great, all this other stuff, but that's just a byproduct of that value. And essentially, you know, we died twice, and the first time is when we're buried, and the second time is really when someone says your name for the last time. So what kind of legacy are we going to leave? And then the last thing you touched on, I think there's going to be a battle for me in not spoiling my kids, because I've worked so hard for them to have a good life, but I got to make sure I keep it on the tracks and I don't let it go too far of a good life. Mm-hmm. Adversity, having issues in life and adversity, it's a good thing. It builds strength. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's actually, being vulnerable and having adversity is a strength, not a weakness to me. And so it's a very fine line, though. How much adversity do you want your kids to go through? Because as a parent, you know this as well as I do, from a dad standpoint, you want to help them at every falling point, every tear that comes down that face. You don't want that to happen anymore, because it hurts us probably more than it hurts them. Very fine line there.
100%. And, you know, one of the best quotes I heard, it was this successful businesswoman. She always said, I don't do anything for my kids that they can do for themselves. And then all of her kids ended up doing well. So you want them to have that adversity. You know, the type of adversity I don't ever want my kids to face is something that they don't get a second chance from. Yeah. So that's, you know, I pray to God my kids never use drugs, because sometimes you overdose, you die, you don't get that second chance. Right. So really that's my biggest prayer, is that they always, no matter what mistakes they have that second chance to learn from that experience and turn it around.
Right.
So, you know, maybe as a parent you want to put those barriers in to mitigate some of those risks for irreversible choices. Right. But, you know, little things, if they fall, whatever, get up, you know, allow them to struggle through that. Yeah. You know, from a business perspective, it's like the earlier they can earn a paycheck and start paying for their stuff, they're going to learn the value of personal finance, and that money can make your life a lot easier than it really needs to be.
Yeah, and there's already a success criteria put in place for our kids that we didn't have. Yep. Right? I'll speak for myself, but you referenced not having financial insight, you know, as you became an adult, and I had none. I didn't have that then. Bruce Lee had a quote, and he said, you know, instead of buying your children all the things that you never had, you should teach them all the things you're never taught. Yep. Kind of back to the success criteria. it's not the tangible thing a lot of the time. It's the internal thing that actually is the success. And who you become is the success, not what you accomplish. That's such a misguided or misunderstood message until you get to that point of accomplishment that's completely empty. I want to touch on one more thing and then we'll get you out of here. So there's such a power in your team, your network, and we have a common mentor, and I call it my Mount Rushmore of mentorship. That's how I reference my 4 mentors. Corey being one of them, Adam Lewin being one, who is a good friend of mine that was also on the show. Jim Havens, who's my attorney and also a mentor. And then the last one would be Dr. Eric Serrano. Dr. Serrano is like a dad to me. He has done more for me in an indirect way than he will ever understand. And on April 12th of 2018, after 4 or 5 years of asking me the same question, did you buy that company yet? That day, whether it was really something that would have ever happened, it didn't need to. But he offered to have investors invest money into me because he believed in me that much. And it was a large sum of money. It never happened because it didn't need to, but it sparked something that I didn't have. And I don't think I really seen him throughout that whole entire journey. It was 407 days from that day to the day we closed on the business. So 407 days of just grinding it out, figuring it out, pushing all the chips in. And then my next visit after we did that, I took him a letter and thanked him and explained it all. And I took him a business card that said owner on it. And that was one of the most rewarding things for me, to be able to have gratitude to him. And it really built a very, very strong relationship with us. And now I consider him a father, a friend, everything. You had a similar experience, I'm sure. I don't even know how you guys met, but Dr. Eric Serrano, just touch on that one name. None of that, you worked together. That's how we met, was through Doc.
So I actually met Eric through Old School, the gym that Corey owned.
Yeah.
So I went in there and trained with Nick Showman, saw this article about a guy that I thought was an Italian guy based on his mustache and name on the wall. I blindly reached out to him and said, hey, I see that you formulate supplements and you're a doctor, you're into powerlifting. I like all those things. Could I come shadow you? And I said, just for 2 weeks. Because I was like, I don't know, this guy could be crazy.
Well, he is,
So,
but
he
he is a crazy fucker.
quickly.
But yeah, we'll let that ride.
So, I'm actually in a neuroanatomy lab dissecting a brain, and I get a phone call, and I answer it, and it's this crazy accent. And he's like, this is Dr. Serrano.
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself.
No caller ID.
No caller ID. And so I tell him who I am, and he's like, yeah, come out and shadow. So I come out for 2 weeks. He practices like no one else, and I was like, this is amazing. And I always say he's the best and worst thing that happened to me, because it's like he took these blinders off and radically transformed my life. And he is like a father to me. I met him 12 years ago. His kids were teenagers at that time, and it's like seeing them turn into young adults, and knowing Eric more personally over the years has been probably the biggest blessing of my adult life. And so he's crazier than hell, but he's one of the most wonderful people that I know. He will give you the shirt off his back. He's insanely generous. He loves pretty much every person that he meets. A wonderful, wonderful human being. So,
He is just a genuine good human.
Yep.
So I met him 10 or 12 years ago, and Corey had referred me to his office. And when I first met him, I was 22 or 23. I was training 3 to 4 hours a day, working 12 to 15 hours a day, sleeping a few hours, borderline OD on caffeine every day. Like, I was just so driven into the ground. I got, went and got lab work done and got my results back. And he's like, Jake, you're a damn idiot. You can't do this anymore. You have to stop. I was like, all right, tell me what my training is. He's like, I want you to take a nap. Go home and go to bed after work every day for 3 months. It probably saved my life.
Yep.
Because my cortisol was spiked through the roof.
Yep.
My testosterone was shot. I was in a bad, bad place. And he allowed me to see the world from a more present view, because I was so focused on the future. It didn't slow me down any, but it made me see things differently.
Yep.
where instead of me driving down this highway and only being able to see 10 miles ahead of me, I could see 10 feet ahead of me.
Yep.
Then, and I don't even think I've ever really talked to him about that, but he really allowed me to be present. And the one thing that he did that was like indirectly, and I don't know if he was ever intentional about it, he would brag me up and showcase me to every single, I would walk in there and he would bring everyone in and tell them, you're working on your house. And it's like, I have this dump of a trailer or this house in town that's not special at all. And he would want everyone to see the pictures and everyone to showcase it. And I'd end up there for 2 or 3 hours. Now when I walk in, he's pissed that I'm there, but in a good way. But what he did, and I didn't even understand it for the longest time, he just put so much confidence and instilled so much confidence in me, and I'm sure he did for you too.
Yep.
He's going to tell you when you're a damn idiot, and he's going to correct you when you're wrong. But I'm going to do the same to him.
Yep.
Or at least tell him that. I like to challenge him because it brings out even more insight for myself.
He tells me I'm an idiot every day, and I think he's done that for a decade, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
And I think, one of the biggest blessings is he definitely has perspective. And I don't know if that's because he's just 25 years older. I assume he was just as big an idiot as we were at that phase of life. And I think, part of the reason you can relate to him is he was this power lifter when he was younger.
Yeah.
He's involved in sports, so he's someone to look up to. So to me, there's David Brooks as an author, and he talks about a second father figure, and he's definitely been that, to both of us.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not just us. He's been that for a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
I know. I mean, Brian Peters, he comes in the gym every once in a while when he's not traveling, and me and him have had, lengthy conversations about Doc, and like he's transformed a lot of lives.
Yep.
And I'm glad he's getting more in the public eye now because he's very reserved in general. But he's someone that his legacy should last forever because of how much insight he has and how much he's been able to help other people. Now, whether it's out there and documented yet, maybe we ought to challenge him to write a book. Let's write a book for him.
So I've talked to him about that. He's a Spanish first language, and that's always his excuse is he's a horrible writer.
Well, I am too, but I have a book I'm writing.
So we just need to record him at all times, and that's how we pass his wisdom on.
Yeah.
But he's a blessing.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, and then we'll end with it, but there is no task too tall in life. So my 2 biggest fears growing up and the 2 biggest, setbacks in my life from a personal ability standpoint, I was a fat kid growing up. I was the kid that had a shirt on in the pool whenever I was in grade school. Wouldn't take my shirt off in front of it. It terrified me. And I used to have nightmares about going to get on a school bus. I'm sitting there, school bus driver opens the door, and I turn the corner to walk down to sit down, and I don't have a shirt on. Everyone's making fun of me. It was something that set me back for years. Because it hurt my confidence, hurt everything that I did. I didn't realize it then. And then the other thing was speaking. So I wasn't a good reader growing up. I used to have like lessons and have a tutor. Being in the public eye, because of my lack of confidence with my weight probably, and then my lack of academia input or application, it was a struggle.
Yep.
So being in front of people or on camera and speaking, huge fear. Taking my shirt off in front of other people, huge fear. And I pretty much do both of them every day now.
I was going to say, leave your shirt on.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job.
So I had my shirt off this morning, and I have pictures to prove it. But now I face them fears, and what I realized, both a coward and a hero understand fear. They have fear.
Yep.
It's okay to be fearful. It's not okay to be afraid, though. Being afraid of failure is not going to help you progress.
No.
Because you're going to fail. Don't accept the failure, learn from it, and move forward. But understand that fear is in everybody. No matter who you are, there's going to be a little bit of fear. So now, when I'm nervous about a situation or fearful, I just look at fear and say, come on, let's ride. And I run toward it. I don't run away from it. I would rather be right there with it and it be close than run from it. And the coward runs from it. The hero runs to it.
Yep.
And Doc had a lot to do with that. So he really instilled that in me where I would start challenging him even though I was fearful of it. But there was a kind of a transition through that time of being with him. And just now, like when I told him I was starting a podcast, he just smiles because he knows. But also, back to writing the book, I have grammar of a 3rd grader. I couldn't write a damn book if my life depended on it. Ask Shredway, he can tell you. Because after 3 chapters of writing, he took it and lit it on fire. rightfully so. But I'm going to write a book.
Yep.
But I'm not going to write a damn thing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not how can you accomplish something in life, it's who can help you. And back to the mentorship and network, one of the most powerful things for accelerating your journey.
Absolutely.
Personal development is mentorship also. You know, if I don't know something and I need to overcome it, if I don't know it at all and I can't research and figure it out immediately, I'm going to tap into my network
Yep.
and ask them. And that goes for every facet in life, but especially with business and with lifting weights or any type of athletic pursuit. There's always someone that has an answer.
You just got to find them.
You got to find them. But having that team of people around you is what makes us successful
Yes, sir.
in our own right. So,
Jay,
Dan, I appreciate
love
you
you,
coming
buddy.
on the show.
Thank
This
you,
was
sir.
amazing. I would much rather be sitting here having casual conversation with you than you driving things and spikes in the back of my spine, taking care of my knee injuries and doing all that. But with that being said, I greatly appreciate everything you did for me because you have helped me tremendously
Appreciate that.
and really expedited that healing process.
Appreciate that,
So,
brother.
is there any organizations, promotions that you want to mention on the show?
Yep. So right now I'm the chief medical officer for a medical practice called the Armory. So it's in Grandview. So it's kind of a novel concept. It's subscription, but it's unlimited medical visits, physical therapy, dietitian, and gym memberships. And I think that focus on prevention is the way we're going to go in the future. Still at Eric Serrano's practice in Pickerton a couple days a week too, and it's a wonderful practice.
Yeah.
So if you want to support it, just think about alternative models for healthcare in the future. But thank you again for
And
this
schedule
podcast.
ahead of time because he's about 3 months out if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And speaking of that, just before you go, that way we can make sure that Doc gets on this show because we've been talking about it for 6 months. Dr. Eric Serrano, I'm calling you out right now. It's time for you to get your ass on the show.
we'll get him on the show.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it,
buddy.
Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks.